This is a stimulus update and daily news report. Got some major update to share with you. With inflation raging across the country, what aid is going to go out to the American people? Well, here is what the White House says is going to help out the American people.
You called on Congress to pass aid to help Americans struggling with inflation. Can you give us a sense of what that aid would do, what it would look like, and where you see sort of the limits of what the administration can do compared to Congress?
I'll play you the full video clip answer to that. Plus, when it comes to stimulus checks, Florida is recently sending out new stimulus checks. California is sending out a bunch of stimulus checks. So California and Florida dueling over stimulus checks. And both governors, Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom, could also run for president in 2024, duel each other and that. I'll give you more details there. Plus, I'll let you know the exact date for the $750 stimulus checks. And I'll play a video clip of Representative Khanna getting grilled on Fox News over the Climate Emergency Act. And I'll give you some other more important updates as well. Hope you're having a more than mundane Monday. If you appreciate the fact-based, fast-paced updates, hit the like button down below. And I'm giving $200 checks to my subscribers. Details of how you can sign up down in the description below. Just a couple days left for that. First up, President Biden needs to declare a climate emergency, according to Representative Khanna, who is a Democrat from California. Should this happen, a climate emergency, what can happen out of that? What does it mean for the American people? Is there more aid that could go out to the Americans and help out with climate? Is there more to it? Take a look at what Khanna says, grilled on Fox News here, asks some pretty tough questions and not really getting out of it. Take a look at what he has to say here.
Joining me right now to assess the agenda and more is California Congressman Khanna. He sits on the House Oversight, Armed Services, and Agriculture Committees. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for being here this morning.
Good morning, Maria. Always a pleasure.
So I know that there was a vote which you voted on the House motion to not sell oil from the U.S. strategic reserves. What happened?
Well, I don't think we should be selling oil to foreign countries right now. I have called for a ban on exports. That's a procedural vote. Democrats always vote against the motion to recommit. But in terms of policy, I have been very clear that we should not be exporting our oil at this point, other than to European allies.
So why did that sale take place then to foreign countries in addition to China, our adversary? How did that happen?
No, it's wrong. I mean, I have Senator Jack Reed and I early on said that we shouldn't be exporting our oil or gas. I don't think that was the right decision. And we're still calling on the president not to export it. In fact, one of the reasons to declare a climate emergency is it would actually give him the power to restrict the export of crude oil. That's one of the things that comes with it. But, Maria, the more important thing is how can we make things in America again and outcompete China? And that's been my focus in Congress.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that focus. The CHIPS Act is something that is very important, I think, for the country to understand. Producing very important items in America is critical. But you just mentioned this climate emergency, Congressman, and I've got to push back on the word emergency for climate. I think most Americans right now are feeling the emergency in their wallet. We look at the cost of items on everything from food to gasoline to the price of an airline ticket, and everything is up in the double digits. And it is partly because of the massive spending of this administration and the Democrats continuing to try to push through more spending, included higher taxes on top of higher borrowing costs and a 40-year high in inflation. What do you have to say about the failure of this agenda?
Well, I agree that there's inflation. I agree that prices are up, but there are two reasons for that. First, the Fed had quantitative easing for way too long, and that was one of the main primary culprits of this. They didn't anticipate the inflation. The monetary policy is largely determined by the Fed. And the second thing is we're not making enough things in America. I mean, look at the shipping costs. Look at the costs for importing all these goods. If we had an industrialization policy, if we made more things in America, we would lower costs. And I'd rather that we be making the solar panels, the electric vehicles, the wind turbines in America than China. Why would we want China to have the lead in batteries and the new energy of the 21st century? I want America to lead in that.
Yeah, I want to take a break and then talk about the CHIPS Act. But with all due respect, Congressman, we know that the inflation rate was at 1.4% when Joe Biden walked into the White House. And we know that then he signed the COVID relief package into law at almost $2 trillion. And that was the beginning of the stoking of inflation. We can talk about that after the break. I'm talking with Khanna this morning, California congressman, as we await more economic data in the week ahead. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and we are back with California Congressman Khanna, who has been working on important legislation on the CHIPS Act. Congressman, I want to get to that in a moment, but we ended the last segment on the COVID-19 relief package, $1.9 trillion signed into law last March 2021, and that was the beginning of inflation getting stoked. You are now encouraging Biden to declare a climate emergency. Congressman, what would this do? Is now the right time to spend more money and raise taxes on people? The average electric vehicle costs $63,000. The median household income is $67,500, Congressman.
Maria, just to be factual on inflation, there was $3 trillion of spending under President Trump. And yes, there was spending under Joe Biden, but it's unfair to say that it's just the spending under Biden that somehow caused the inflation and not under Trump. They were both parties that were committed to helping people rescue them from COVID. But
Congressman, I'm just looking, just to be clear, Congressman, I'm looking specifically at the numbers. And when we look at the inflation timeline, which was the handover from President Trump to President Biden, this was in January of 2021, the consumer price index was at 1.4%. So when you say, there was spending under Trump, yes, that's right. But when you look at actual inflation, inflation was at 1.4%. Then it was 2.6% in March of 2021. Then the president signed in the COVID relief law. By the time we got to July of 2021, inflation was at 5.5%. Then the Democrats led the infrastructure package. That was signed into law November 21, and inflation was up to 6.8%. By March of 2022, right after the invasion by Russia, inflation was at 7.9%. And today, we are at 8.6%. From the last meeting, above 9%, rather, for the last reading in June, 9.1% is the last reading. So we're up to 9.1%, Congressman, with all of this spending.
But, Maria, correlation and causation are different. I mean, you can't say that Trump sending stimulus checks in December of 2020 was not inflationary and somehow Biden doing it in March was inflationary. What happened is we got out of COVID because of vaccines developed by President Trump and President Biden distributing them, and that increased demand, and the supply was constrained, and the Fed policy was wrong. But I agree with you that inflation is a major problem. The way to address it is to have more industrialization in America, to build more things in America, not to be relying overseas. And the climate emergency, look, if there were ever a time to go to the American people and say, we don't want petrostates like Russia to have power. We don't want our president to have to go to beg to Saudi Arabia for oil. We don't want to be going dependent on Iran or Venezuela. The way to do that is to have a moonshot on renewable energy and to make that stuff in America, not China. That's what a climate emergency would do. It would say, because of this war, let's have a long-term energy independence strategy and make the solar, the wind, the batteries here.
Oh, I think it is an emergency, but it's an emergency because we have completely iced out investing in fossil fuels. I mean, that's really where the emergency is. You go to any investment portfolio manager today, and they're being told, you better get on board with ESG or you're going to have major problems. You're not going to be investing in fossil fuels. So if you're talking about an emergency, why not reinstate the XL pipeline? Why not allow drilling on federal land right now, Congressman? Wouldn't that get gasoline prices lower, rather than going hand in hand to Saudi Arabia?
What would get gasoline prices lower is stop exporting the oil while these oil companies are making billions of dollars. I mean, it's not like they're not making huge record profits, $30–40 billion of profits, while Americans are getting fleeced at the pump, and they're selling their oil overseas to make that profit.
It's not the oil company's fault, sir. This is capitalism. You're going to see companies make money for selling a product. That is democracy and capitalism. But the fact is there is a massive pushback. against oil companies. The oil industry, how many companies have gone bankrupt? How many times have we seen investors want to invest in oil but told not to? And in fact, we're allowing investors to invest in Chinese stocks that don't even follow auditing rules, and they're tied to the Chinese Communist Party. So oil companies are bad, but investing in communist China is good?
I'm not for investing in communist China. I'm just saying that the oil companies are doing just fine. And you know that, Maria. Exxon, Chevron, they've got record profits.
I'm not talking about the oil companies. Just to be clear, I'm not talking about the oil companies, and I'm not talking about President Trump. I'm talking about President Biden and the climate change agenda, which has, in fact, killed many in the oil industry.
What are your thoughts? Should there be more action for climate? Should President Biden do it through executive action, since it's not really happening through Congress because of Joe Manchin blocking the Democrats? Should there be anything on that? Let me know your thoughts on that. When it comes to aid to the American people, the Fed is trying to walk the tightrope to bring down inflation, a strategist says. When it comes to the aid that is going out to the American people, that clip that I showed you earlier on, what is the answer to that, and what is the White House economic advisor saying? Take a look at this video clip right here of what aid American people could expect during inflation.
You called on Congress to pass aid to help Americans struggling with inflation. Can you give us a sense of what that aid would do, what it would look like, and where you see sort of the limits of what the administration can do compared to Congress?
Well, certainly. Fighting inflation has been the president's #1 priority. He understands how challenging this is for families. Let me start off with some good news that we've been seeing recently. You know, gas prices have fallen now for 39 straight days, fallen by over 60 cents, actually. And there's now, stations all around the country where gas is actually selling for less than $4 a gallon. So that is some good news and moving in the right direction. But certainly the president has remained focused on getting this legislation passed through Congress that would lower the costs of some real pain points for families, prescription drugs, making sure that health care remains affordable. So those are some things that Congress could do and do right now that would help families coping with today's high prices.
I mean, talking about those high prices, I want to ask you about shrinkflation. I mean, people paying the same for less product. Talk us through sort of both why that happens, how it is allowed to happen, and what can be done to stop it.
Well, certainly when you go to the store, one way that retailers and sellers deal with high prices is they make things seem a little bit cheaper so people keep buying, or maybe they make them more affordable. I mean, the reality is that we are all recovering from a historic global pandemic. The kinds of price increases that Americans are facing are happening around the world. Other countries are also seeing historically high prices. And, everyone is trying to get through this period while, continuing to see a strong economy. So I understand that it is challenging for families, but again, there's some very good news in the falling gas prices, which the president has been very much focused on.
What are your thoughts on what was said there? Do you agree, disagree? Could the Biden administration do more to help out people during inflation, like inflation relief checks to everybody? Let me know your thoughts on that. Speaking of stimulus checks and relief checks, California and Florida are dueling over stimulus checks as a tool against inflation, and it's the latest example of the governor's ideological clash. So basically, what this article is talking about is some 23 million Californians are set to receive stimulus checks as Gavin Newsom looks to counter inflation. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has a more targeted aid which will reach only 59,000 households and cost far less. While the relief aims to offset high inflation, both states' programs could lift prices even higher. So Governor Gavin Newsom right here on the left, he is the governor of California, potentially might run for president to take over President Biden's role. And then we have here Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, potentially might run for president in 2024 instead of former President Trump, depending on what goes on there. But basically this article talking about different stimulus check approaches. The newest stimulus checks going out in Florida. So Florida sending inflation relief stimulus checks to families. What to know. So these are $450 per child, and these are for adoptive families and foster families who, which is about 59,000 of them in Florida. Much smaller compared to California, which has more of like a blanket approach giving stimulus checks to a lot more people in general. So Florida giving out stimulus checks, but more targeted. Speaking of stimulus checks, exact dates Americans have to apply for up to $750 checks before they go out this summer. Can you claim? So this article giving the latest in terms of stimulus checks. We have Chicago, Illinois giving out up to $150 there, $50 for, I think the bus, $150 for gas cards, and then transit cards, $50 there. Connecticut up to $750, so eligible families can receive $250 per child, capped at 3 children, which makes it go up to $750. And to apply, you have to visit the site in California. Basically, you go to 2022 CT child tax rebate, and the deadline for that is July 31st. If you're in Connecticut, have any kids, then you could potentially get that check there. Minnesota, up to $750 there to be eligible. These are for employees who worked during the pandemic, so kind of like a retroactive hazard pay. And the deadline for that actually passed. That was July 22nd. So yeah, those are the different checks, and that is all the news that I have for you today. To hopefully brighten your day a bit, here's my daughter Bella's tip of the day.
Hi guys, this is the tip of the day. I want to tell you the one thing when you feel sad, you have to do something that you really want to make you feel better or make you feel true. Or you can also, if you help somebody, then you'll feel even better or something. Or if something's really into you and you're really feeling good, you should do that as well. Bye, this is Bella. This was the tip of the day.
Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate all of your support and time and hanging out with me while I give you the news. Makes my day a lot better when you get to watch too, and we get to hang out together, so pretty cool. Thanks for that. Don't forget about the $200 checks, details down in the description below, and subscribe to the channel if you like how I get straight to the point, share some video clips with you and all that, and hours go into this, so a simple like button or subscribe wouldn't hurt. And if you want to check out my latest videos on my other channels, you could click up here, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, be safe. Thank you for watching.